All right. So, good day, everyone. So, this will be our first SQL class, and it's going to be just an introductory class. So, today we'll be talking on Introduction to SQL and Databases. My name is Olabode Greatness, and I'll be your facilitator for this SQL class. So, we'll be starting with Introduction to Databases. What is a database? A database is a collection of structured data that is stored electronically in a computer system. It stores data in a format using tables, and it is also a place where you can store, you can manipulate, and retrieve data. For example, in a school database, you have tables like students, teachers, and courses, and so on. So let's say the normal modern way in a school, in the normal way they store files of the teachers, the students, and the courses is like having a file of containing records of the teachers, maybe when they apply to the school, having another file containing records of students when they are admitted in a school, and having another file containing courses each student is going to offer, and so on. There can be as many files as possible. Then those files can now be brought together. Maybe those three files can now be brought together and grouped. And let's say they'll put them in one particular folder and name the folder. Okay, this folder is for the school. So let's say that's the simple way of storing records in that school. But now we're talking about a database, and a database is a collection of data that is stored electronically. You don't need to store your data having them as hard copies. You get what I'm saying? So the data is stored soft copy, is stored electronically. It is stored on your computer system, and the data is stored in a format using tables. So when I say earlier, I mentioned that those files are grouped together in a folder. So instead of having them grouped together in a folder, instead of having files grouped together in a folder, when we talk about a database, you have them in tables. We can say a database is a collection of tables, because when you talk about a file for the students, for the teachers, and for the courses, you create tables for each of them. So those tables are now brought together into a database. Then you store those tables together in a database, and the database will allow you to manipulate it. When I talk about manipulate, that means you can walk around the data and do what you want. So let's say you want to change records of a student, or you want to delete record of a particular student that has left the school, and so on. So you can manipulate the data. You can also retrieve data. Let's say you are looking for a particular student, or you are looking for a teacher's information. You can just retrieve data easily from the database. So the data are stored in a format using tables. So a database is a collection of the data stored electronically in a computer system. Okay, so let's talk about features of database. Let's talk about features of database now. So we have four main features of the database. We have data storage, we have data retrieval, we have data management, and data security. So when talking about data storage, a database, it, data storage, it stores large amounts of information in tables. So that's one of the feature. That's the first feature of the database. It allows you to store large amounts of information in tables. You know, I say database is like a collection of tables together, grouped together in a database. So data storage allows you. So a database allows you to store large amounts of information in form of tables. Then we have data retrieval. It enables quick access to specific data using queries. A database allows you to have access to the data you stored in form of tables. It allows you to have access to them using queries. So you can just retrieve your data easily when you write, when you use queries. When we talk about queries, we are going to talk more on queries later on. So queries is just like you writing SQL codes, SQL short codes to just retrieve your information quickly when you store them in the database. We also have data management. Data management, a database allows you to facilitates data updates, deletions, and modifications. Like I said earlier, you can manage your data within a database. Once you have access to that database, each of the tables in the database, you can manage each data there. You can update the data there, you can delete, and you can modify it, make changes to the data in the database. Then we have data security. Data security ensures your data is protected from unauthorized access. So when we deal with database, you can give access to whoever you want to access that specific database. So it makes sure your data is protected from unauthorized access. Anyone without access to the database cannot access that particular database. All right. So now let's look at how does a database actually store data. We've already know. Okay, now I believe by now you should be able to you should understand what a database is and the main features of a database. So now let's look at how exactly does this database store data. So database stores data in a structured format using tables, and tables are composed of rows and columns. Take a look at the picture here. This is an example of a table. I believe we should all be familiar with Microsoft Excel. At least you should have seen this interface in Microsoft Excel before, where you have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those numbering are just to make it easier for you to know, easier for you to locate your rows and columns in Microsoft Excel. So this is an example of a table where you have rows and columns. The columns are numbered A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and the rows are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So when we talk about order ID, from A, these alphabets A downwards, this is one column. This is the first column. This alphabet B downwards, this is the second column. Then this C downwards, this is the third column, and so on and so forth. Then the row, this number 1, this is the first row, and that's where you have your header, where you describe what the column is actually going to contain. That's the first row. Then the second row like this. So when we're talking about columns are vertically, and rows are horizontal. Like, horizontal. So database store data in a structured format using tables, and this is an example of a table. So this table now can be kept in a database, and this table composed of rows and column. What is a table without a row and column? All tables must have a row and a column, at least for it to be called a table. Then each table represents a specific type of data. So like I said, this is a table now, and it represents a specific type of data. What can we say this table is collecting now? We can say this table is collecting records of customers that order from a particular store. That's why we have a product here, what the customer bought and where the customer is buying stuff from, the region. We also have the quantity or the number of products the customer bought and the price of each of the item here. So this table is just collecting information on on customers order in their store. So, and each row in the table represents a single entry, like as each row. So let's take this row 2 as an example. This this second row, it represents a single entry. It's only talking about, okay, there's no name of the customer here, but this second row is only talking about this customer that has this customer ID, this course 1278, this particular row. Where you have the other the products, even the products here is only talking about this customer here. The region is talking about this customer. The date is talking about this customer. The quantity and the price is talking about this customer. So each row is for one particular customer. The second row, that's why you can see the ID of each customer, they are different. No customer can have the same ID. So each row represents a single entry, such as a customer or a transaction, and this table is talking about a customer. The columns or field define the attributes of the data, such as the customer's name, age, or account number. And according to this table now, each column, don't forget, the columns are labeled A, B, C, D, and so on. So the columns define the attributes of the data, like the customer's name, age, or account number. So this column C now is defining attributes of the data. Is telling this table that it's telling us that everything on column C is talking about products that the customer ordered. That's why we have shirts, shoes, hats, socks, and so on. Everything is under products. That's the products for each customer. And don't forget, each row represents a single entry. So shirt is a single entry for customer 1278. Shoes is a single entry for customer 1022, and so on. We also have region. That is also telling us that, okay, under this column we have regions of each customer, and so on. So take note of this. Each column must have a unique name. That is, each column, I said columns are represented with this ABCD according to this table. Each column, so the order ID, customer ID, products, region, and so on, they all have unique name. And what do you mean by unique name? That is, you can see order ID and customer ID, they are both ID, but they are not named ID. Like, they are not just named ID, because it will be very confusing to anyone that sees that on your table. So now you separated it. This one is order ID, this one is customer ID, for you to identify. Order ID is referencing the order, customer ID is referencing the customer. So they all have unique name. Product has its own name, region has its own name. And mind you, when you are creating a table and you are giving names, you are giving column or header names to your table, make sure it is a name that is very, very descriptive. Like this now, they talked about quantity. It is quantity. They put quantity on top. So even you, as a reader that are looking through this table, okay, they are talking about quantity. It is quantity. That this column contains quantity of the products the customer ordered. Region, you do not just say where customer ordered from. That is too long for you to name as your column or as your header for that particular column. So that's what I mean by they must have a very unique name for you to be able to understand it very well. Then each cell has its own data type. What do we mean by data type? That is, they all have their own data type. That is, you are describing that, okay, each column you want it to contain a specific type of value. For example, this quantity contains whole numbers. As you can see 5, 10, 7. I believe that's integer. They are whole numbers, right? Then they are whole numbers. That means you can just specify that, okay, this particular column quantity, I want the data type to be integer. So if someone wants to enter a particular value that is not an integer, the column is going to reject it, because that is not what you put there when you were creating that table. I hope you get what I'm saying. Now you can see we have integer, we have 5 as that's the first customer's quantity. We have 5. If someone is now wants to enter data into this column and the person writes FIVE, that is a text, that is a string, it is not an integer. So the column is going to reject it, although you are trying to communicate to the user that it is 5 is the quantity that the customer ordered. So it has to be an integer. When you are creating it, you can specify that. So each cell has its own data type. Okay, now let's talk about a database management system. What is a database management system? We've talked about a database, we've talked about features of database, we've talked about how exactly does a database stores data. So now, what is a database management system? Based on your definition of database that you know, that database is like a collection of tables that are stored electronically, collection of data stored electronically. Now, what is a database management system? If a database is collection of data stored electronically, then that means database management system is a software that allows you to actually manage your database. That's the most simple definition I can come up with. So a database management system is a software that enables users to efficiently create, manage, and manipulate database. It provides tools to store, retrieve, update, and delete data while ensuring data security and consistency. Database management system also facilitates data sharing among multiple users and applications. So database management system is a software that allows users. So you now, we've talked about a database, but where exactly can you create this database? Where exactly can you manage that database? Where exactly can you create your tables? And where exactly can you manipulate your database? So that's where a database management system comes in. It is a software that actually allows you to run through all these things. It allows you to create your database, manage it, and manipulate it. And it also allows you to run queries that you will use to create, manage, and manipulate the database. And it's a database management system also allows you to share. You can also share data. You can share your database with multiple users and applications. Mind you, when we talked about data security the other time, like I said, it prevents unauthorized people from accessing your database. But when you share your data with other users will be able to access it. So you can only share with users you want to actually have access to that database. Now, let's talk about types of databases. We have two main types of database. We have the relational database and the non-relational database. The relational database, the RDBMS, that is the main and the most popular type of database. This database, they organize data into tables where each table is made up of rows and columns. Data in different tables can be linked using keys, which serves as a relationship between them. So relational database is is a type of database that actually deals with tables. It's a type of database that actually keep your data. It organizes your data in form of tables, into tables. And tables can be linked together using keys. I want to talk about keys. That's like when you find relationship between two tables and you figure out what is common, what they have in common. Then you can use that to link or join. Let me put it that you can use that to join those tables together to actually have a wider view of what the two tables looks like when they come together. And examples of relational databases: MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, and Oracle. So let's take a look at this picture right here. You can see, let's say we have four tables. We have customers table, we have products table, we have employees table, and we also have others table. And in customer table, we have the following columns. We have customer ID, first name, last name, birth date, money spent, anniversary. And under the products table, we have these columns: product ID, category, and price. And under employees table, let's say we have employee ID, first name, last name, birth date. And for others table, we have other ID, customer ID, employee ID, product ID, order total, and other dates. Let's now say we want to link these four tables together we have to look for the relationship between them. We have to look for the relationship between them. You can see there is customer ID here, and there is also customer ID column in the orders table. So the customers table and the order table can be linked together since there's a relationship between them. They can be joined together using the ID. And also the employees table, we can see we have employee ID as a column here, and it is also in the orders table. So we can link these two tables also together using the employee ID. The products table have product ID, and the orders table also has product ID. So we can actually link them together. So these four tables, they are actually related in one way or the other. So they can be stored in a relational database. And examples of these relational database management system, we have MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, and Oracle. As you can see, we have SQL in almost everything, in almost all their names. So we are going to talk about SQL later on. And the second type of database is non-relational database, which is NoSQL. They don't use SQL. As you can see, the other name is NoSQL. So in this database, they are used to store unstructured or semi-structured data. They don't rely on tables, they don't rely on SQL, and they are designed to scale horizontally, making them ideal for big data applications. An example are MongoDB and Cassandra. So when I talk about non-relational database, they store unstructured data, and they are mainly used for big data applications. Imagine you are storing large data of, let's say, audio or video files, and they are not structured data. Audio or video files, they can't fit in a table. So that's when non-relational database comes in. It helps you to manage such scenarios. An example is MongoDB and Cassandra. So now let's go into SQL. Introduction to SQL. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it is used for storing and managing data in relational database management system in our DBMS. It helps you to store, we've been saying database is used to store tables, and when you store tables, you can manipulate it, you can update it, and do all sorts of things with your data. Now SQL comes in here. SQL is the language that you will actually use to store your data, to manage it in the relational database management system. It is used to create the database, manage it, and manipulate it. It allows you to retrieve specific data through queries, and it allows users to query the database using English-like statements. So, like I said, we talked about queries before. I said I will explain it later on. SQL allows you to retrieve specific data through queries. So queries are like the queries are like the SQL codes that you'll be writing to create your database, manipulate and manage it. Whatever you want to do with your database, you have to go through SQL queries. SQL queries are just like the English-like codes that you would write. That's one thing that makes SQL very special and unique. The code is very easy to understand and know once you are very serious with it and determined, because they are just like English-like statements. It's, for example, let's say you want to cook rice. To write the SQL code for it, you can just be like, oh, first of all, I want to put the pot on fire, I want to pour water in it, and so on like that. They are very direct and straight to the point. You can see from this background picture, you can see something like select AVG salary from salary, where gender is this. This is an example of an SQL query, an SQL code. This is a very simple example of it. And you should be able to guess what this code is going to do merely looking at this code. When I say select AVG, AVG should is a short form for average. So let's say you're calculating the average of a salary where this gender is male. That means for all male gender, you want to calculate their average salary in that particular table. We'll get there later on. So now let's talk about SQL data types. So now let's talk about SQL data types. SQL data type is used to define values that a column can contain. I think I mentioned that earlier where I showed you a table in Microsoft Excel. I said it that each column contains specific data type, that when you create your table, you specify that, oh, I want this column to contain only this type of data. If you specify it to contain only an integer data, and a user enters a text or a string data, it is going to reject such data, because when creating the table, you've already specified that this is what you want it to contain. And every column must have a name and data type in the database table. Yes. So now let's look at the data types we have. We have many data types, but for the purpose of this class, let's talk about this. We have int. Int is also integer. It's also known as integer, and it's used to store whole numbers. Decimal is used to store decimal numbers. Float is used to store floating point numbers. Char also means character. It's used to store fixed length character strings. Varchar is used to store variable length character string. Text stores large amounts of text data, and date stores date. Time stores time. Data time stores the date and time together. Then binary stores fixed length binary data. So, okay, when we start the SQL class proper, we'll be examining each of these data type. But let me talk a bit on varchar. Varchar is used to store variable length character string. It's just like, for example, whenever you are, let's say, creating an account, let's say you log into a website and they ask you to create an account for something, and you type in maybe your email, they ask you for password, and they be like, oh, your password should contain 8 letters, one uppercase, one special character, and you start thinking of the kind of password you want to type. Okay, so let's say later came up with something like password 2500, and you put $sign, %sign, exclamation mark, just because they want your password to be very strong. That's when varchar comes in. Varchar can store that kind of text. That text contains normal text. It also contains special characters. So irrespective of whatever you want to type in, it also contains integer. So irrespective of whatever you want to type in, it's going to accept it if you use varchar. So let's talk about SQL command types. SQL commands, they are used to communicate with the database, and these commands are instructions. The command performs specific tasks and functions. First of all, let's talk on DDL. DDL commands, the full meaning is data definition language. And DDL commands, sorry, all right. Okay, so let's talk on DDL commands, data definition language. DDL commands permanently save changes in the database. Data definition language commands, and these are examples of the commands under the deal. We have create, we have alter, we have drop, rename, merge, truncate. So create is just like when you want to, is a command you use to either create a database or create a table. Then alter is maybe you want to make changes to maybe a column or so within a table. Then drop is if you want to delete maybe your database or your table permanently, you want to delete it permanently. Then rename is when you want to change the name of something within your database or your table. Then we also have DML commands. DML commands make changes to the database. The full meaning of DML is data manipulation language, and these are the four main commands under DML. We have insert, update, delete, and merge. Insert, let's say you want to insert let's say a new student joined the school. You want to insert that student's record inside the table you have for students before. You can use the insert command to do that. You can use updates when you want to make changes to the data within a table. Maybe you want to make changes to a particular data, a particular, maybe someone's location change or something. Or what do I use? Let's say you want to make changes. Let's say you want to make changes to something within the table. You can use updates. You can use delete when you want to delete a particular record. We also have DCL commands, that's data control language. You can either grant or take back authority from any database user. We have grant and revoke. Those are the two main commands there. So you can grant a user access. You can grant a user access. You can grant a user access to the database, and you can also revoke that access. You can also revoke the access from the person. We have DQL command. It's used to fetch data from a database, and that's data query language, and that's where select comes in. Is used to query the database. Let's say you want to fetch data from the database